What's cracking, y'all? So today gonna be discussing the Sony Fx30 and just essentially how wrong I was about this camera. Now, before we get into it, I just want to let you all know the audio that you all be hearing today is from the Ceremonic Soundbird V6. I'm currently testing this mic. Y'all, I got a few jobs I want to actually test it out on before I kind of give you all a full review. However, I will say this out the gate, I love it. In comparison to like the Rode NTG5, that's a whole nother video. If you all actually want to hear my thoughts between this mic and like a Rode NTG5, make sure you subscribe to the channel now, hit a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, change to a thumbs down. All right. Now, I will be using my phone for notes just so I can make sure I touch on everything I want to touch on with this camera, because I didn't give it the best review when this camera first, when this camera first came out. I was definitely on the side of, nobody asked for this camera. It's a crop sensor, yada, 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 right? A lot of preliminary thoughts before I actually had the camera in my hand. Now, number one, there are cons about this camera, right, that other people have touched on, but they really don't work for my cons, you know what I mean? So I will try to touch on cons that actually replies to what I knew, to what I do and what I use it for, versus kind of regurgitating the same thing that everybody's already said about this camera, right? So number one, why did I get this camera? I got this camera for docs for sure, weddings, if I'm like the only person there and they're actually paying for multiple camera angles. I wanted to be able to have like two cameras on the side and then still have this camera. So my current setup is a Sony Fx3, A7S III, and Fx30. I got this event, again, those talking had the same body, same design, and then one of the pros I'm gonna touch on now is the fact that it has tally lights. So if I am far away from this camera, I don't have to wonder if it's recording. I can actually just look to see if a light is on and I know it's recording. And then for BTS, right? So sometimes if I just need a two camera setup with the A7S III and the Fx3, I'll just give this camera to somebody to record BTS for me, because as a filmmaker and it's a production company, BTS is more important than you think. So those are the four main reasons why I got this camera. Now, some of the cons that you all probably heard is things such as like not having shutter angle, proper waveform support, a super crop in 4K 120. Like, those cons doesn't really apply to me because I'm not using this camera for that. Like, this camera is primarily a 24 FPS camera, to be honest with you. Like, that's the main way I use this camera. Now, I'm not saying I don't have cons. I'm just saying those cons are not my cons, all right? So let's just kind of talk about just why, let me just kind of give you all some of the great things about this camera, and then I'll sprinkle in my cons in between the segments. Now, despite how some people may feel, even myself a few months back, this is a proper cinema camera, right? Like, I think, the way times are going, cameras are like changing, like by, just on the regular, right? So what we probably know as a cinema camera, it may be different. Like, prime example, I guarantee you there's somebody who was filming, let's say like in the 80s or like late 90s, and like a big shoulder rig with this big old heavy equipment. They may look at a mirrorless body and be like, hey, that's not a real, that's not a real cinema camera. Or they may look at a C7 and like, that's not a proper cinema camera. Or you may have somebody who only does photos with an actual mirror inside, may look at a mirrorless camera like, that's not a proper photography camera. My point in saying that is, like, as times change, technology would change, and sometimes we just have to adapt and grow with it. You just have to choose which piece of the era that you want to adapt to and which things you want to stay tried and true with. You know what I mean? Pick your poison. Now, for me, one of the main reasons I got this camera, obviously the fact that it pairs well with my Sony Fx3 is because of Cine EI. Now, having an Fx3 and an Fx30 and having Cine EI, I'm gonna be real with y'all. The way I love the way Cine EI handles exposure in comparison to like the regular ISO, because no matter what I'm doing, I know that I'm getting the maximum stops of dynamic range, and when I switch either to 800 or in this camera to 2500, and I can actually still see what it would look like if I went to like bring it down in post. I can get a clear idea of what my image will look like in post, and not worry about me affecting the stops of dynamic range that I get versus something like a we'll say like a Sony A7S III, which is used as standard ISO. Not saying that the A7S III has terrible dynamic range. Obviously, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, like, it's much better to be able to manage or look at your final image, if you will, right there in camera, just by scrolling your wheel down and kind of see, like, okay, what would I already know I'm at base 100, I'm at base ISO of 800, but what would it look like if I went down to Cine EI, 200? Like, okay, I like how my highlights is looking here. I like the shadow information. Okay, like, when I get it in post, I know this is the idea of kind of where I want to be at. Now, along with Cine EI comes some pretty cool things that is also baked in kind of like the cinema camera package, if you will, which is going to be being able to film things with a baked-in LUT. Now, I've been using, Buttery Luts. I'm pretty sure, I've been using a Buttery Luts for like most of the weddings I got to do like a quick turnaround for, or if I got a corporate event and they want the raw footage for, I don't have to worry about putting it into DaVinci Resolve and then applying it and then sending it back and upload it. Like, I can film something with the look that I already want to apply to it and still kind of keep the same amount of dynamic range. Like prime example, on my Sony A7S III, I obviously can't do that, right? If I still want the same amount of stops in S-Log3 as far as dynamic range is concerned, I don't want to use any of the picture profiles with say like a Cine 4 movie profile or like a HLG. Now granted, they are very similar in stops to dynamic range with the with S-Log3, but if I want the max dynamic range and I still want to use like a quote unquote a look to it, I can still get the maximum dynamic range and still just use a LUT baked into it, so the client is not kind of they're not getting a short end of the stick anywhere. And I love that specifically about the Sony FX30 and FX3. Now, obviously with getting this camera, another thing that I wanted to, make sure that was good for me was lens options. And with the Sony FX30 having the same lens options that I have on my Sony FX3, to me it's always like a no-brainer, right? So even though like I'll put like a 35mm on my FX30, I really know that's a 50mm. I'm like, okay, that's exactly the look I'm kind of going for in regards to this shot here. Now, before we go any further, before we go into the con, what I do want to do right now is just kind of show you all what, and see if you all can pick, right? I'm gonna show you all a recent interview that I just did with my best friend, and I wanna see if you all be able to tell the difference between the Sony FX3, the A7S III, and the FX30 in these shots. Now, I'm not gonna tell you which one is which like a little bit later on in the video because people be capping. I'm just gonna be real with y'all, bro. Like, people be capping like, oh yeah, I can instantly see the difference right there. Like, you see this? That's that 6K down sample. Shut up. You don't, shut up, okay? So, check these shots out real quick, and it's comment down below. It's camera A, what camera A, B, and C is. Let me know what you think. As you all can see from the image quality from all three of these cameras, they all look phenomenal, right? And that's kind of like leading me to my next point. The Sony FX30 for the body only. I didn't get the one with the top handle because my FX3 had a top handle. Like I wouldn't be using a top handle for both cameras. I was like, I have one camera with a top handle. The other one could be body only, right? So with me having an FX3 with a top handle, the price of the Sony FX30 when I got it was like around $1,700, $1,800. You feel me? Like that's for what I'm getting, like a camera that shoots, 422 10-bit, got 4K 60 if I need it. I got other camera to do full frame 4K 60. However, to get all of that in this package, and which is the same wrapping as my high-end quote unquote full frame cinema camera, to me you couldn't beat that. Like for a C cam, like this is for a C cam, B cam, whatever the case is, however you want to use it, that price is phenomenal for what you're getting out of this camera. Like I'm telling you, I was wrong. I was wrong when I initially spoke about this camera, and I can honestly admit that. Now with price, now coming into price, let's talk about one of the key differences between this camera and the Sony FX3, which is filming me right now, and that's gonna be variable shutter. Now, for people who like, if you do what I do, you shoot weddings, you shoot events, you would know that sometimes like there are like these awful lights in there that causes like just terrible flicker, right? So with that, being able to have a variable shutter with the Sony FX30, I wish they add that into the FX3. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't, but it's the Sony we're talking about. But being able to dial in the exact shutter that you need to avoid flicker is amazing. And again, you're getting this into an $1,800 body. So that's another reason why I wanted this camera, just kind of like if I do run into a situation like that, I have another camera that can handle that, and I don't have to worry, I don't have to be stressed or worry about, something being ruined in my shot or having to send it to DaVinci Resolve and then add deflicker. Now, deflicker does work. Don't sleep on the flicker. Now, going back to some of the images you all saw, I'm gonna tell you all right now which camera is which. So camera A was the Sony FX3, camera B was the Sony A7S III, and then camera C was the FX30. If you guessed that right, let me know down in the comments below. But one of the main reasons I love this camera is for the clean image. Like, bro, it looks great. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going with the whole 6K down something. Like none of that shit matters to me. I'm gonna be real with y'all. Like that's not like a super impressive thing for me. The impressive thing to me is like it matches great with my other cameras. I can use S-Log3 on all my other cameras just like I can with this camera. I'm getting the exact same look, the exact same image, and it looks great. I get a great clean image out of this camera. Moving on to one of the cons about this camera, it's definitely gonna be, come with that image that, it is still a Super 35 camera, so low light performance is not the best. Like, don't get me wrong, it works, and like a little grain never hurt nobody, as you all probably seen for some of these shots that I'm showing you right now. The grain is not like terrible, but it's definitely not no FX3 or A7S III, I can tell you that right now. It's definitely not that level of clean. But if you like in a pinch and you have a fast lens, you'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like in most situations, all my camera lenses are usually f2.8, and I have two that are like f1.8s, right? Which is the 55 and this 35 right here. with these like both being f4.8s, I can usually be fine. But again, because of how I use my cameras, if I know I'm in a low light situation, I'm just not gonna use this camera. I have 2 other cameras that are more than capable of handling a low light situation. Even though, like I said, even though I have other cameras that can handle the situation, you know, technically it's still a con if you consider like low light performance. It's just not the cleanest when it comes to low light. Now that's also gonna lead to like another con. Again, depending on what type of lenses that you have, it's not a big deal. Most movies are shot on Super 35 anyway. So the depth of field you're seeing, like even some of these movies that's being shot on Super 35, we'd say it's like around 1.8, right? Which is like around an f2.8 on a full frame camera. So, and that's typically what I shoot most of my interviews and most of my work on anyway. Like, to be honest, f2.8 is still a great, you know, aperture, if you will, when you're trying to have like a blurred out background, but not like completely blurred out. So like in most situations, like, you know, no, I'm not getting the same depth of field, and definitely, you know, it is definitely a thing that I have to consider if I'm switching lenses or putting like a 17 to 27, like if I'm putting a 17 to 28 on this camera here, I know realistically that's like really like a 24 to like 40. You feel what I'm saying? It's a great focal length, but it's definitely still not a 17 mil like on a full frame camera. So you see what I'm saying? Like the depth of field definitely does matter, and you know, you having to recompose your shots. But again, if you are a cinematographer or a videographer, you know how to compose your shot to get what you need. So again, it's a con, but like, is it really? Now, another great pro for this camera is like, it's gonna be great. It's a great BCS camera. So sometimes you may not need a 3 camera setup. I've just been enjoying it because my line of work has been, you know, requiring me to have 3 cameras. Like whether it's me filming a podcast or me doing an interview, having that 3rd angle is great. But again, this is a phenomenal BCS camera too. So like, if you don't need that 3rd angle, being able to give this camera to someone else and they can clearly see like, hey, this is the record button, I point and shoot, like, okay, boom, it's very simple. And I can always look to kind of see if the person who's using the camera is recording because of the tally lights on this camera. You know what I mean? Like having tally lights on this was just like a phenomenal thing to have. Having tally lights all around this camera, like, to be honest, I forgot to turn off on all my cameras, but I really don't even use the red border no more for Sony cameras because like I can clearly see with this big old light here if it's recording or not. So it is a phenomenal camera for BTS. Now moving to another con, which is gonna be the display on the flippy screen. It's not terrible. It looks good. Don't get me wrong. It's great. I just wish Sony would just, in my opinion, because I'm a phone person too, right? If Sony was to put the same technology and the same display technology into their camera systems versus just like their cell phones, I think that would like impress a lot of people and kind of even have more people like yes, like this is the camera I go to. It's a phenomenal display. I don't have to ever worry about something that's like really in focus or how the lighting is. Like I can clearly see what I'm looking at. Like I think Sony should definitely hook us up with a better display, at least from the Sony Xperia phones. Like you can do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like the $1 Million Man. We have the technology. It's there. Just put it in there, bro. As I've been kind of touching on this for a very long time right now at this point in the video. I've stated multiple times on how this is such a great B and C camera now, and I really do mean that, right? Like, it is a phenomenal B/C camera. If you have a full frame camera, you really don't need like another camera that's full frame. I would easily recommend a Sony Fx30 for you, like easily. It gets the job done. It has a phenomenal image. It's very reminiscent to the body that you already have. The only thing I think that's different is the color of the screws, but other than that, it's the exact same body as the FX3. And I chose this, even though the A6700 around the time, the A6700 camera was out, but I'm just kind of done with like Sony alpha body. I am a videographer. Like, this is what I do. I run a video production company. So I really don't want another camera, one, that only has one card slot, and then two, that I have to worry about overheating at any point. With this camera, I don't have to worry about overheating at any point. I can be real with y'all. Like, even though the A7S III has never overheated on me, there's still like a certain frame of mind, a certain peace of mind that you get when you have a fan in your camera. And having a fan in an FX30, like, I could just sit it up somewhere, high angle, whatever the case is, I could just let it run and not have to worry about it overheating at all, because I know the fan is gonna be there, right? Now, as crazy as it's gonna be, like, as crazy as it is, we're gonna end this video off on a con. And one of the biggest cons I would say for this camera, if you are somebody who does not have another B or C camera or like a great A camera, and you actually wanna make this your A camera, one thing that you definitely wanna consider is the fact that if you were to hook this up to a Ninja V to get the ProRes RAW that you can't get from this camera via HDMI, there's a pretty massive crop when you shoot in ProRes RAW on the Atomos recorders. I don't know why that is. Like, the crop is like, I should be able to essentially get the full frame, the full sensor of this camera already, but there's a massive crop when you're using a Ninja V with this camera. So that's definitely something to consider if you want to do any of your work in ProRes RAW. In my opinion, just, I haven't seen situations where I really need RAW like that, and plus the storage, like that's a huge thing. I think people definitely do not consider that when they're talking about RAW on any camera, even with 8K cameras. Like prime example, you look at the DJI camera right now, right? That's talking about, and everybody's talking about 8K. 8K is great, but each and every reviewer that I've seen talk about this camera is like the file sizes are ridiculous. Like I think there's one reviewer only have 30 minutes on 1 terabyte. Bro, what? What? Absolutely not. So for me, 4K is still king. I don't need 8K, and I really don't need ProRes like that. In most situations right now, clients just really need stuff for social media. Like, let's be real, like, you don't have a lot of clients trying to put things on TV anymore as far as advertising. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying, like, right now, social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, these are the places you're gonna see, like, you know, commercials and advertisement for. So like that level of detail and quality, or if you're not doing any green screen, I don't really see the huge benefit of having 8K or using these huge file sizes for RAW. I think the internal codecs that you get in this camera with All-I or H.265 are more than enough. So I can tell you right now, I easily 100, 1000%. Even if you do not, again, if this is gonna be your first camera pickup, I 100% recommend a Sony Fx30 for your first pickup. I think right now it's probably still on sale for like $15.98, but I would get this. If you are a video shooter first, even if you do photo, it does take pictures. However, if you are a video shooter first, I 100% would recommend that you get this over the A6700, just due to the fact that the A6700 only has 1 card slot, and it can be more susceptible to overheating versus the camera like this with a built-in fan. I had a great time talking to y'all today, man. I know it's been a little minute, man, but I've been busy, you know what I'm saying, trying to get other things going on for Brookssmedia other than just YouTube. But we have had a lot of sponsors come through for the channel. We got, you know, Animal sending me the new Shogun. I got the mic for Ceremonic. I got some headsets. I got some batteries. Like, your boy has definitely been working behind the scenes. I'm shooting my first full feature film in a couple of weeks, depending on when I drop this video. I'll be shooting this in January, which I'll be doing BTS for as well. So make sure you all stay tuned into the channel, subscribe. And if you like the video, go ahead and make sure you leave a thumbs up. But if you listen to my instructions and you did not like the video, change it to a thumbs down and tell me what you did not like about it, and I can improve it on the next video. I appreciate y'all for watching. It's your boy Sean B from Brookssmedia, and that's Brookssmedia with 2 S's. If you ain't at the S, you ain't spelling it right. Deuces.